everybody, it's Rebecca, Virginia, and today I have 4 rustic DIYs to share with you. These are spring DIYs that transition perfectly into the Easter season. If you're excited for this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell so you never miss out on a future video. Let's get started with the first DIY. This adorable DIY is a bunny cloche tablescape, and it might be my favorite DIY I've ever made. Here's everything that you'll need to recreate it. I'm beginning this DIY by unwrapping a coaster I got from the Dollar Tree. It doesn't matter the color or what it says because I'm going to be covering the entire thing in a dark brown paint. Next, I took some of this dark green decorative moss from the Dollar Tree, and I'm covering the coaster in the moss. I didn't put a super thick layer down because I still want a little bit of the coaster to show through, but this is going to be a habitat for the bunny, so I wanted it to be fairly covered. The bunny I'm using is a ceramic bunny from the Dollar Tree, and it's intended for kids to paint, but I have another use for him. I'm leaving him his original white color, and I tried to remove the hook from the top of his head, and at first I couldn't get it out and I accidentally chipped the top of his head, but then I grabbed some smaller needle nose pliers and I was able to finally pull out the metal ring from the top of his head. After placing down the bunny into our tablescape, I wanted to add some florals around the moss to add a little pop of color, so I chose these bright yellow flowers. I added just one, and I was going to add another, but I thought some more taller greenery might add some nice depth to the tablescape, so I went ahead and added that behind the bunny. As I went along adding more embellishments to the tablescape, I kept placing the glass jar over the scene just to make sure everything fit underneath it. I thought my bunny needed a little more color since I left him white instead of painting him, so I decided to take some light blue baker's twine from the Crafter's Square section, and I hot glued it around his neck, and then I added a tiny bow. I took a glass ball topper from a glass bottle that I got at the Dollar Tree, and this is going to go on top of the bunny cloche. There was this rubber all around the bottom of the topper, so to cover it up while keeping everything nice and cohesive, I took that same light blue baker's twine and wrapped it all the way around the topper. The last step is to hot glue our topper down onto our glass jar. You could also use E6000 if you wanted it to be a little bit more secure, but I like the hot glue because it dries faster. Then I placed the glass jar over my bunny and my tablescape was complete. Today's video is extra exciting because it's actually a collab with Liz Moore from Liz Moore Decal and Decor. Liz is one of my favorite DIY YouTubers, and she's actually one of the people who inspired me to create my own channel. I love her style, I love the way she films her videos. They're so professional, but she has really cool effects, and I just pretty much love everything that she comes up with, so I'm so grateful that she agreed to do a collab with me today, and I cannot wait to see what kind of DIY she comes up with. So I will be sure to link her channel down below, so please check her out if you haven't already. Back to the DIYs. Our second DIY in today's video is a bunny nest. Here's what you need to make it. Starting off this DIY, I am taking this large styrofoam bunny out of its plastic. Then I'm going to be decoupaging the bunny with, instead of tissue paper, some napkins from the Dollar Tree. So I went ahead and removed those as well. And this is the only tricky part of working with napkins when you're decoupaging. It was a 2-ply napkin, and it was extremely hard to take the 2 plies apart from one another. So I found that by ripping it and kind of making that jagged edge, that was the easiest way that I could pull apart the 2 plies. I'm used to working with tissue paper, so you don't really have to do this step, but you definitely want to do this, otherwise it won't lay down flat on your bunny if you're working with a thick napkin like this. I also thought that the easiest way to do this, instead of working in large pieces, I was just going to cut out some strips and then make those into smaller squares to then adhere to my bunny. The next part is extremely easy, but a little bit time consuming. And all that I'm doing is laying down my napkin squares and then covering it in Mod Podge and moving on. Because I chose this bright plaid pattern, I knew there was no way I was going to get all the plaid in the same direction, and I didn't really want to. I wanted it to be a hodgepodge of all sorts of different directions and colors, so I just had fun and went in with all the different napkin squares and just placed them down wherever I wanted on the bunny. The only slightly difficult part about doing this is when you get to the bunny's ears and a little bit around his face, so just make sure to be extra careful and not add too much Mod Podge, otherwise the napkin will tear. Okay, now it's time to start building our bunny wreath scene. So I am taking one of these oven covers from the Dollar Tree. I had spray painted it brown for another project that didn't end up working out, and all I'm doing is placing this underneath our grapevine wreath. You could also just use a paper plate. The sole purpose of this oven cover is just to catch any of the Spanish moss that is going to be falling through our little bunny nest. So again, you can just use a paper plate, a paper towel, really anything. It just so happened that I had this oven cover and it actually fit perfectly. Now that we have filled our grapevine wreath up with all of this Spanish moss, I am just kind of molding out a little section so that my bunny can go ahead and fit perfectly inside of the wreath. The last part is the most fun part, and that is just adding all of the florals and little embellishments into our bunny nest. I put those jute carrots again on some toothpicks and placed those in our nest. And then I just got a bunch of florals and greenery and started placing them all around our bunny and all around the grapevine wreath. Once you're done adding all of the embellishments you want to your bunny nest, you are ready to display it. You can leave the oven cover underneath the wreath in case you want to collect any stray Spanish moss, or you can remove it. The next DIY in today's video is an egg-shaped display shelf. Here's everything that you'll need to complete this DIY on your own. I'm actually going to be using the plain back of the sign in this DIY. I didn't want the glittery words to be showing, so I just painted over them. You could either paint over them, cover it in craft paper, or if you don't mind them, you could just leave it as is. But I knew that I was going to be displaying this in my home, so I didn't want one side to be wood and one side to have all those glittery words, so I just painted over it. The side of our sign that I'm going to be using, which was originally the back, is now going to be the front. And I took some of this wood scrapbooking paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I just used a regular old glue stick. I usually use Mod Podge, but I've been really liking just using a plain old glue stick, and I find that it works just as well. So I just put the glue down and then used an old gift card to smooth out any bubbles just in case they formed. One sheet of the scrapbooking paper didn't quite cover my egg sign, so I went ahead and took the top part of another sheet, and I just traced this out and then cut it and used the exact same method using the glue stick to place this little extra bit of the wood scrapbooking paper down. Now that my egg sign was all covered in the scrapbooking paper, I moved on to making the shelves for this sign. And to use this, I'm taking some wood blocks from the tumbling tower toys at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just covering them in some brown paint. I only did about 1 drop per block, and I found when I did this, it kind of made the paint look more like a stain because it really needed more to be fully opaque. So this was a really fast and easy way to kind of make a stain, just use less paint. My job for laying down where I wanted the shelves was actually kind of easy because I just followed the wood grain on the scrapbooking paper, and I ended up doing a little bit staggered shelving. So I did 2 to the left side and 1 to the right, and again I just used the wood grain in the scrapbooking paper as my guide for where I needed to place my little wood shelves. I used hot glue to adhere the tumbling tower blocks to my egg sign, and that worked perfectly. It held them in place and they weren't moving at all. Next, it's time to start decorating our shelves. I knew on one of the shelves I wanted to have some eggs, so I have the styrofoam little mini eggs from the Dollar Tree, and I painted one in this robin's egg blue color, and then one I painted white. Next, I'm starting to lay out how I want to style my DIY. So I took some felt carrot stickers, a moss bunny, and my 2 styrofoam eggs, and I'm just laying them down on the shelves and seeing how I like them, and if I like a lot of the Spanish moss, if I like a little, or if I don't like it at all. Then for my moss bunny, I added on a little jute bow and a little flower next to him, and then I was happy with how everything was placed, so I got out my hot glue gun and started gluing down the moss and all of the little embellishments for the shelves. You could absolutely use this egg sign as a hanging sign, but for me, I wanted it to be more of a stand-up, standalone piece of decor in my house, so that is why I didn't add any like jute hanger or a little string up at the top, but you could still definitely do that. However, I wanted to make my piece of decor into a freestanding shelf. I decided to take this wood block sign. I picked mine up during the fall time. I know they had a bunch out during Christmas, and I've seen some new ones out for Valentine's Day and Easter, so definitely pick them up if you see them. And all I'm doing is taking one of the tumbling tower blocks and hot gluing it to our display shelf. And then once that is dry, I'm going to hot glue the tumbling tower block down onto the larger wood block sign. After pressing down firmly to make sure I had my egg shelf nice and centered, I thought that I needed to add a little something extra, and I remembered that I had this set of Easter spring themed galvanized signs, and I really liked the welcome one. I thought it would look really cute with this display shelf, so I went ahead and hot glued that right onto the wood block. The other great thing about this egg-shaped display shelf is you don't have to hot glue the items down that go onto the shelves, and that way you can change them out to easier transition from spring to Easter. The last Easter themed DIY in today's video is a bunny carrot sack. Here's everything you'll need to make your own. I started off by painting this wood dowel in a dark brown color and then setting it aside to dry. Then I took one of these brown fabric bunny sacks, and we're actually not going to be using it for the bunny face, so I just turned it inside out. They also came out with these for Christmas, so if you have one of those, that works too because we are turning it inside out. And make sure you cut off the tag on the inside. Don't pull and rip it because it will tear the seams out of the side. Next, I'm taking some floral foam, and I'm kind of just guesstimating, but I figured I wanted about halfway up the length of the brown sack, so I just kind of guessed, and then I took my scissors and very professionally I sliced through the floral foam. And you might be wondering, why didn't I take the plastic off the floral foam before I cut it? And that's actually because it's really hard to get floral foam into fabric, particularly fabric bags like this one. So by leaving the plastic on, it slid super easily right down into my brown sack. And then you could really just leave the plastic in there, but I just put my hand down there and pulled it out. Now moving on to the items going inside of our bunny carrot sack. So first off, we have to have the actual bunny. I loved this moss bunny that the Dollar Tree came out with. It's so cute. So I hot glued that to the top of the wood dowel that we had painted earlier. Then I really loved these jute carrots from the Dollar Tree, and I didn't want to put a dowel on them because they were so skinny down at the bottom. So I found that toothpicks actually worked great. So I went ahead and put the toothpicks in the carrots, and then it was just all about arranging how my carrots and bunny were going to go into the sack. I kind of wanted the two carrots on the outside at an angle. Then I was just playing around with how I would be closing up our sack and what that would look like. Then once I figured the height that I wanted the bunny on the dowel to be, I cut off any of the excess dowel, and I just put the bunny right down in the center of the floral foam. And now again, I'm just playing around with the sack, figuring out how scrunched I want it to be before tying it off with a piece of jute, and then I added a little bow. To make our sack full of carrots and our bunny a little more realistic looking, I wanted to add some Spanish moss onto that top area of the sack so it looked like the carrots really were growing inside of it. I wasn't sure how much moss I wanted to use, so I went ahead and just placed it down first before I got out the hot glue gun and started gluing it down onto the sack. Our bunny was looking a little plain, and I wanted to tie in the orange and the carrots, so Dollar Tree had this awesome little carrot ribbon with gold trim, and I loved it, but it was a little bit too thick for our tiny bunny, so I just folded the ribbon in half and then made a bow that way and just hot glued it down onto the front of our bunny. To add more of a rustic touch, I wanted to write carrots 5 cents on the front of the sack. I don't have the best handwriting, but this actually came in handy because I wanted this to look extremely homemade and kind of like a bunny wrote it because he wanted some carrots. I don't know, but either way, I just wanted it to look really homemade, very rustic, so my not so good handwriting kind of came in handy. Then my pen wasn't quite thick enough for this sack, so I just went over the carrots 5 cents with some black paint. And this bunny carrot sack completes all of my Rustic Easter Home Decor DIYs. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep searching, keep creating.